But it was a race full of drama. Lewis Hamilton was the first man that found the barriers on Sunday. And it's a rare mistake from Hamilton. We haven't seen this sort of thing, particularly when it starts to drizzle. You don't often see Lewis losing out here, but he comes in towards turn 3, difficult corner. You always run the high line here because the banking is steeper, so you carry the momentum through the corner. But Lewis fires it in with a little bit more speed and just has a lot of steering lock on as he's washing wide onto this painted surface on the outside. And as the rain starts to fall, possibly that just retains a little bit more of the moisture that the track doesn't. And he just loses the rear end. And the problem with this corner, we've seen it through practice over many years as well. If you get it wrong, you have a small oversteer, there's no runoff really. You're straight into that wall on the outside. And so Lewis kind of caught the moment, but was immediately into the barrier. You can just see the difference here from 2 laps earlier versus lap 23. And he's just wider. He's attacking a little bit more on this lap, trying to get onto terms with George Russell towards the pit stop window. And as we come through, he's got similar steering lock on, but he's just a little bit wider in lap 23 when he's going to lose the car than he is on 21, where he's a bit neater, actually tucked in behind the Mercedes. And we can see as well on the data for Lewis, the red line is when he's going to crash. The blue line is initially lap 21 here. And you can see the red is just much more committed through turn 2 into turn 3, later on the brakes, and he's carrying that speed into the corner. And with the rain starting to fall, it's just not going to stick for him. And it's pretty much an identical story as we see lap 22 and lap 23. In fact, he was even more cautious on 22, but on the lap that he crashed, he goes wider, and he probably goes wider because he's carrying a lot more speed on the entry. So a driving error really for Hamilton in conditions that were just starting to become trickier maybe for the drivers, and that was our first safety car call.
Generally felt like it was going okay. I had good pace compared to Charles ahead of me, and my tyres were still okay. The rear was getting a bit twitchy, and I got to turn 3 and had a snap, and I can recover.
It did get worse though for Hamilton, and we actually have a question on this because retirement from Zandvoort, but he has a grid penalty for Monza. So question comes in, why did Hamilton get a 5-place grid penalty, and where were the yellow flags? So we can have a look on board. It's the way to the grid that Hamilton's been penalised for going too quick under yellows. Now, the race director did say before, because of the way that you come out of the final corner and ping it off to the pit lane, it's a little bit dangerous. So they're going to have a double-waved yellow flag there, and the drivers were warned about this. But here's Lewis now coming up towards that. So you've got a yellow flag on the outside up here, and then you've got, even more critically, a flashing panel coming through the final corner. You pretty much can't miss that as you're coming in, but Lewis stays pinned up towards the pit lane, and you can see as we just play it back why this yellow flag is in play. The drivers want to get a gauge for how quickly they can attack the pit lane speed limit line, how quickly they can attack the pit entry, but it's just dangerous to do on this circuit. It's narrow, and you've got all of the people coming onto the grid for their shift. And these people here are just meters away from Hamilton, who's flying in at high speed. That is not the behaviour that you should have under double waved yellows. So Hamilton really without a leg to stand on at that point. We can see what the other drivers did at the same thing. It was there the whole way through the reconnaissance laps. Isaac Hadjar backs well off it. And this is basically what everyone else did. So you can see the difference in speed for Hadjar versus Hamilton. George Russell now backing off and following now a line of cars coming back into the pit. So Hamilton, you can see without a reference of anyone else ahead of him, but this was everyone else trundling in, and Lewis quite clearly blasting past those yellow flags, and that is going to be an infringement on safety grounds. The unfortunate thing really for him is that he didn't get that penalty during the race, because had he got that, it would have been a severe penalty. We've seen yellow flag penalties for Lando Norris in Qatar last year. It would have been big. It would have cost him the Dutch Grand Prix. But of course, for Hamilton, he ended up crashing out anyway. Having a grid penalty in a Ferrari at Monza is just going to be that much more painful. So the stewards waiting till after the race to look at that has ended up being even more painful for Lewis Hamilton. And Stewart's deliberation is something I personally didn't like in the Dutch Grand Prix. I said it after the Hungarian Grand Prix before the summer break. There was an incident between Hamilton and Verstappen, and the stewards waited for the end of the race to decide what to do with it. Well, they did the same with Russell and Leclerc. And it's a tough call, this one. Leclerc attacking George Russell round the outside on the VSC restart, gets side by side, a little bit of contact, and Leclerc takes the place. It's actually difficult to see categorically if Charles goes over track limits, but it looks for all intents and purposes like he does, but the camera angles, we can't actually find one that shows the high up shot of all four wheels going over. So as we look at this one, you can see Charles on the outside goes off the track quite clearly with the front right. Does that rear left maybe stay on? It's a tricky one to be absolutely sure on it. It looks like he does go off the track, and then that would be an overtake off the road. It's clearly a very feisty bit of driving from Charles. I quite like the attempt, to be honest. This is him on board on the restart. Then we go green. Russell's trying to get the power down, and I like it because it starts here at turn 10. Charles gets to the inside line, forces George to go wide, and that compromises the Mercedes exit down towards turn 11. So we tuck into the slipstream, and this is just mighty ambitious from this far back, round the outside. But this is a guy who's just lost out in the safety car pit stop windows, and he's going to send it right round the outside and just give it a go. Gets halfway along the outside of Russell on this part of the corner, which then gives him half a car on the inside of this part of the corner. And it's a bit of give and take, but there's not really the space there for Charles to stay on the track, I don't think. So we jump off with the front right. Again, no conclusive angles on the rear right. And that is why, in the end, it was a racing incident. I think in the end, neither driver too bothered to cause a fuss, because Russell ended up with the best result he possibly could have, and Charles Leclerc was out of the race with the contact from Kimi Antonelli. But we need these decisions during the race, because nothing the drivers could have said here will have made a difference to the steward's decision at the end. They have the information in front of them, and if they can't see the angles, they're not going to suddenly see it because the drivers tell them. So it could have changed the outcome. And if Leclerc had have got a penalty, a bit like Hamilton, it would have ended up being a grid penalty for Monza, whereas a 5-second penalty for something here would have been annoying, but not the end of the world. So delaying the penalties can make them have bigger or smaller consequences, but they're not proportionate to the incident. Same thing we saw in Budapest.
I take zero satisfaction of finishing P4 after that race. To be honest, it was a bad start, poor driving from my side, letting Charles pass me, and then pace was bad. Then obviously the damage, the incident with Charles, the damage, I lost 1 second per lap. So it was just really not fun at all, and very lucky to finish in P4. Well done to Isaac, he did an amazing job the whole race, but we didn't deserve to finish there.
It does give me a chance to show this great move from Lance Stroll, who had a really solid drive on Sunday as well, up behind Gabriel Bortoleto early on, and he makes the difference on the braking zone, which Charles Leclerc couldn't do because he was just too far back. But by getting ahead towards the apex, he has now got himself into a position where Bortoleto can't do much to defend it. So long as Lance can make the apex of the second corner and not cut the corner, this is going to be a really strong pass. And it is. There's a little bit of a contact there from Bortoleto into the side, but that's nothing to do with Lance Stroll. That's not his fault. And he gets through. It's a nice clean move and a good drive from Lance. There were more non-clean moves and more catastrophic non-clean moves for Charles Leclerc later on. And it's Kimi Antonelli that he's trying to defend from as he comes out of the pits, and he's ahead of Kimi, but we get the contact as Antonelli looks to the low line in this banking, washes out wide to the outside line and hits Charles, and that is a retirement for the second Ferrari as well, so disastrous for them. And this is a tricky corner, this one. It's luring to go to the inside line, and that's what Antonelli does. You look like you've got all the space in the world as Leclerc goes wide, but the banking is really shallow at the bottom. It ramps up on the outside, and that is why if you go to the low line, the conventional racing line, you've just got a lot more turning to do than if you run it wide and use the natural camber of the road. And that's why everyone uses the racing line out wide, and it's why Kimi thinks about it down the inside, but he's always going to wash wide with the entry speed he was carrying. And this is a nice drone shot to illustrate that he was just washing into Charles, and that was the contact that was all on Antonelli, that one. And a pretty ambitious move here from Kimi, and it was a shame at the end of a very solid weekend's work for him. Even if the Q2 exit looked bad, he was within 0.2 of George Russell's pace again, so much more encouraging for Kimi. But you can see here, Leclerc out of the pits, Antonelli thinks this is my chance. He's coming in from a long way back, sends it down on the inside, and he's just now washing, understeering wide, clipping Leclerc on the exit. So a definite penalty, that one for Antonelli, and cost him some good points in the Grand Prix.
Didn't feel like I overshoot massively. It was a bit unfortunate because while I was trying to keep it tight, it came a bit down from the banking, and then that was the moment where the contact happened, and it was it was a shame. I feel sorry because obviously it's not nice to take someone out, but at least some positive today, and we move forward.